Hey everyone, it's RichardMetalFan here, bringing you guys a new video. I'm going to be doing another interview. Welcome to Richard Metalfan's interview, episode 6. Today's guest, we're going to be talking to Xen Campbell, or Xenor, or Nor. He's the lead vocalist for the Australian metal band Ne Obliviscaris. We're going to be talking to him about sort of like him getting into metal, sort of like the Australian metal scene, and sort of like the history of Ne Obliviscaris. And he also has a new band called Antiqva, which had dropped their new single today, which we'll talk about as well at the interview. So we're going to go talk to Xen now. Enjoy the video. So hey everyone, Richard Metalfan here. Here with Xen from Ne Obliviscaris. There's Antiqva and Omega Infinity is the other band. And Xen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well after a long line of interviews this morning, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure, no problem, man. So basically the format is we're just going to go through your catalog, but before we go into that, let's just go from the beginning. What were the first bands that got you into metal, and really just what influenced you to be a vocalist?
Well, the first exposure I got to anything sort of rock or metal related was I started on bands like say Guns N' Roses, Alice Cooper, and sort of went I guess from that into in my early days to straight into death metal, so bands like Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, Slayer. Had a bit of a heavy kind of thrash influence, and then I kind of found the early black metal scene, or second wave of black metal, which kind of spurred me more on this journey to where I am today. So bands that I started listening to, like Satyricon, Emperor, Torque, and Borknagar, bands like that.
Oh, love Borknagar. And so how did you get to know the guys in Ne Obliviscaris? And you guys have formed in 2003. How did you all form?
2003. Well, ultimately, I met a bass player from a train station I used to go through. We found that we lived around the corner from each other, so he was a bass player. We kind of looked like we both listened to metal, and so we started up a conversation once, and then we went into advertising for different musicians, and so none of us ultimately knew each other before the band had started, and so it was 4 completely different people from very different backgrounds. We kind of formed, started rehearsing, and then we advertised online to get more musicians. So it's where I kind of first met Tim. So I wanted a cellist or a violinist to join the band. So we advertised online for an instrument like that, or a stringed instrument like that. And so Tim, I would consider the other founding member of the band. So the other 3 that I'd started the project with went within the first year or 2.
Awesome. And I think it was around the time, like a few years later in 2007, you put out your debut sort of like EP demo, The Aurora Veil. How did that came to be, the whole like recording process?
We were very inexperienced and very rough, and had no idea about recording. It was, most of us had never been in a proper band before, so a lot of it was tinkering around at home or dabbling here and there. But we kind of it was we started 2003. That was 4 years later, and so we thought it was time to actually record something for people to actually hear, because we'd kind of started playing live in 2006, and wow. So after being a year of playing live or so, and we had nothing to give people, we thought, we really need to record something so that people can take something home away from a show and listen to it, and therefore might share it around. And but the whole process was a bit daunting, considering we had no idea where to start and where to go. But it was a very difficult learning curve, but a very important one, which every band ultimately will go through. But the first one generally will be the hardest, I think.
Yeah, because I saw like I was listening to it earlier. I like the early versions that would later be recorded for Portal of I, like
Mhm.
tap list of the starless star abstract.
Tap,
Can't even say that right.
Tapestry of the Starless
Yeah, it's like
Abstract,
a
yes.
that song has a tongue twister in itself. So
Yeah,
I thought it's a good. I like that version as well as like their final version's great. Especially it sounds more raw
yeah.
sounding and a lot more. Almost has like that black metal feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more for a raw feel in terms of the music I listen to in general.
Yeah,
It may, a lot of people will argue whether or not that with the sound that we produce, as you've mentioned, in terms of the version that you like, a lot of people like the earlier versions, but at the same time, a fair portion like the more updated versions where they can hear it and their kind of ears are adjusted to something a bit more with a bit more clarity. Like I grew up with a lot of black metal, so I like my sound to be dirty and disgusting. And for me,
yeah.
I get a lot more feel and atmosphere from that sort of thing as opposed to hearing every single detail within the music.
Yeah, and I think it's a good EP. I'm trying to like find it in my collection. I see it like pop up on like Discogs or eBay for like $200, and I really would like to not
Okay.
arm or limb for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I haven't actually listened to that in yeah, maybe since as a comparison to how we recorded it in 2012.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course you sort of like toured around for a while, but then I think you got signed to your first label, Code 666. Was that like a
Yeah.
local label in like Australia, yeah, or in Europe?
No, no, they're actually based in Italy.
Oh wow. And
Yeah.
how did they
So,
get? How did they hear about you guys?
oh God, it was so long ago, but I think I'm not sure whether we kind of contacted a few different labels or they contacted us. From memory, I can't actually remember. I should. But they're a very interesting label. Like a lot of the bands are very kind of left of center, very unusual bands, kind of dark but kind of quirky and progressive in some ways. So they have a very interesting roster. I'm not entirely sure as to whether the label is still around now. I haven't sort of had a look. I think they maybe are. But yeah, it's at the time we were on them, there's a lot of interesting bands which I think people should check out. Funny story, for Omega Infinity, the other guy I have that project with, he had a band called, I'll insult the band name. The band name was called Todd Galicta.
What the hell the name?
So he was the drummer in that project, and their project was on that label as well.
Awesome.
So it's definitely a band worth checking out also.
Yeah, I will. And then of course you all played around in Australia, but then in 2012 you dropped this piece right here. Great debut. I remember I actually spent $120 on eBay for this because it was at a friend.
Thank
And I
you.
remember, yeah, it's all signed by you guys from the last time I saw you play. Like, what was that whole like touring cycle for that album? Like,
It was an interesting experience for us because we'd never done a lot of touring before. It was kind of small tours here and there. My timelines are going to get mixed up, I know, because it's been so long. But I think the album was, we had I guess a bit of a cult following in terms of the demo being out and online, and I guess the internet is a curse as well as a blessing with music.
yeah,
Kind of, I guess, destroyed the bands being able to earn from music for a living, but on the other hand, the exposure is amazing.
awesome.
So the demo kind of allowed us to have some sort of reputation even internationally, and so the album, I think, was almost like a statement to say that yes, we could produce an album with songs that are worthy of, I guess, the growing following that we did have at the time. And so it was almost a statement piece, so to speak. But at the same time, it was, kind of a good thing for us to understand that in ourselves, we're writing music ultimately for ourselves, but it proved to us that, we are making good music. There are people out there that love what we do when we're writing it you know, for ourselves, you have 6 people in the band who are from very different walks of life, different musical influences, and for you to all agree on something, then you, I guess, you know, if you all agree that you're making quality music, then there's a high chance that, you know, your music will appeal to quite a wide audience, despite writing music for yourself.
Right, right. And one thing I was also curious is being that you and Tim sort of like sing together, do you all have to be like in the same level, like emotionally or inspiration when it comes to like writing lyrics, or does one come up with like lyrics, or then one person has to like adjust their vocals to that, or just when it comes to singing together, how do you two make it so it's like a level playing field in the song?
It was quite an interesting process to start with. I mean, Tim and I will always be, I guess, on different emotional levels. Tim's generally the more uplifting, bubbly type. So I have to, because I write all the lyrics for the band, and I write so Tim's lyrics as well. So I have to think in a different mindset to what I would necessarily sing. However, Tim, when we work together in regards to, so Tim has general ideas and melodies that he wants over certain sections, and depending on the section as to how I kind of direct the lyrics in that regard. So
right,
he would give me melodies that, even to the point of having also a syllable count. So give me a range of syllables between maybe 10 to 12 or 5 to 7 amount of syllables that I can use within this section, and can you write something for that to suit this particular melody? And so I would write and kind of trying to mold it to how Tim would potentially sing, with even what sort of mouth shapes he would be using for those particular parts. So it can be quite a complex, long process, but you know, Tim and I have worked so well over the years in terms of doing this that we don't really need to. Now it's a much sort of shorter process for us to do that. But as with anything, there's generally a lot of teething problems.
right, right. It would be sad to like have like the greatest set of lyrics and it would go like one syllable like over the arrangement and stuff.
Yeah. It's but you know, with singing, depending on how you sing as to how you can mold your voice to make it fit, if you slightly altered melody or whatever. But yeah, generally there hasn't been necessarily a lot of compromise, because I trust Tim's abilities completely in what he does. So if he writes a particular melody in a certain way and I can't fit what I want to say within that melody, I know, for instance, he may be able to sing what I want in a melody that's just as worthy as his previous one. But there's a lot of discussion that we have to make it work.
Right, and I also, like I said, going back to the debut, one of my favorite songs from you guys is "And Plague Flowers the Kaleidoscope." I consider it to be kind of like you guys' Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like the beautiful parts, heavy parts. I just feel like you just go through like a lot of like emotions through that track. Like a moment I can just feel like just want to punch people in the face, and then a few moments later I just want to hold my lighter up and just cry.
Yeah, it is quite a popular song. Tends to be one that a lot of that kind of, I guess, resounds with people, and it does have a lot of a lot of emotions and emotional journey throughout the song, I guess. And I guess in some ways that might be why people relate to it so much.
Right. Right, and then moving on, in 2014, you dropped Citadel, and this is pretty much the album that really got me into you guys. I discovered you back in like late 2015, mid to late 2015. I had a buddy of mine recommended you guys, so I went and checked it out, and I dug what I heard, and that's pretty much the album that got me into you guys. So what was that? How was it like going from Portal of Light to Citadel?
Well, I guess there was a lot of pressure for this one, because, you know, we had so much hype behind Portal of Eye that this one was almost, again, I say, another statement. So almost a statement, because you have a lot of bands where, you know, their first album, they'll never be able to top in a lot of people's eyes. And so for this one, Portal of Eye, we had a lot of pressure, and we still have a lot of pressure with Portal of Eye, because a lot of people still see that as a much better record than our following two. And so Citadel was a big kind of well, a lot of pressure for us, and so we didn't, we don't generally put a lot of it's not necessarily apparent at the time that there's a lot of pressure. We just want to make music that we like and what we enjoy playing. And so the process was a lot smoother and a lot more professional in terms of how we went about creating it. And a lot quicker, because obviously Port of I took 9 years to actually make, ultimately, from when we started the band to 2012 when it was released. So this one took us a couple of years to do. But yeah, I think the process overall was a lot smoother. We're a lot more mature in terms of our abilities, and also the way we wrote and how we wrote together.
Yeah.
So the process overall was definitely a lot smoother, and yeah, I think the overall theme was a lot more kind of focused and professional.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially, I know it's all that time you sort of toured, and especially I think it was also like that album cycle where I saw you all for the first time in 2016. I think it was your first US tour with opened up for the Homies and Cradle of Filth, and you also did your own headliner tour. And what was that like coming from Australia, where you're based out of from US? Was there like a lot of pressure like this touring in the US for the first time during that cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when it's touring's it's a bizarre world. You kind of we're a small Australian band trying to get overseas. One, it's difficult for any band from Australia to actually successfully. You can get overseas, but to successfully tour overseas is a different realm altogether.
Right.
Because there's so much money involved in making something like that happen, so many commitments. And any band that will tour overseas for the first time or the first few times, you'll lose money regardless.
Right.
It's a lot of pressure. You're spending money on flights, visas, bus hire, and then you also have to worry about all your costs back home while you're touring. And so before you know it, you're tens of thousands behind before you've actually left the country. And so it's a big risk, but at the end of the day, it's like, what's the band a full-time career, or do you just want to do it as a hobby and then maybe tour around your own sort of country here and there, which is fine for some bands, but it depends what your priorities are and what you want to do. But for us, it was tour, I think it was the start of 2016 or in the first half of 2016, we toured with Cradle.
Yeah, it was the first time I saw you guys.
Yeah, that was a very kind of stressful, because we were at the last minute, we weren't entirely sure as to whether the tour would happen because of visa issues with Cradle.
I heard about that with Danny, like the first 4 shows got canceled, but then after that, the rest of the tour was okay.
Yeah, so we had to kind of, at the last minute, organize our own kind of first few shows before we jumped on the Cradle tour. But it was a good experience for us, and a big learning curve to tour with a band that had been around for so many years. We were very inexperienced, and we toured before. The year before, we'd kind of toured Europe, like festival tour and whatnot, and we had some experience. But in terms of a club tour where it's show after show, every day you're in a different city, that sort of thing, kind of opened our eyes as to how much more organized we need to be, how much more focused, and I guess how much more vigilant we need to be with everything on tour. Because you look at Cradle, they've been touring for that many years, and they're a very well-oiled machine. And
yeah, I know that you also met Lindsay during that time, and you started Antiqva, which we'll later get on to a little bit later, which is awesome. But also being as you guys from Australia, I think Australia, I consider Australia to be kind of like Sweden of the Pacific, with so many great bands like you guys, Parkway Drive, Thy Artist Murder, Caligula's Horse, like so many different
like styles of like rock metal from Australia. Was there like a scene down under where you guys felt like comfortable of, or did you all just wanted to like get outside of Australia to get your name out there?
Well, I think Australia is very removed from the rest of the music scene. We have our own kind of community here. We're so kind of cut off, and for any band to get overseas is it's possible, but it's difficult if you don't have the financial backing to be able to do that sort of thing. It is a struggle, and if you don't have a fan base, it's a struggle. So touring around Australia, a lot of bands will do it for their entire existence and never be heard outside our shores. So the scene in general is quite supportive in a lot of ways for bands that do get overseas. However, you do have your kind of tall poppy syndrome, where there may be negative negativity towards bands that breaking the mold and getting out there. A lot of people may not like that sort of thing. I don't know. It's kind of a weird word. I guess that's the case with any country really, but I think it's a bigger deal when it's Australia, because we're a continent in ourselves. So, but for the most part, if you're a band that's able to get overseas, a lot of other bands are very supportive in that regard, and it gives a lot of bands a lot of hope that it is possible, as long as you put in the hard work and you're consistent and vigilant and you have the drive to do it, then it's definitely possible.
And then I think I was also, after Citadel, you released like 2 like EPs as part of the crowdfunding. Did like the crowdfunding come like right when you were touring the US, or was that before?
Oh God, I can't remember. So the crowdfunding EPs, I believe.
Yeah, there are Saraban to Nihil and Herath. I probably butchered those titles.
Yeah, Saraban to Nihil and Herath. So those EPs, I believe, were for our first world tour.
Yeah.
And so that was crowdfunding campaign. I've done a lot of talking today. Crowdfunding campaign to fund us being able to tour across the world, and which was quite successful for us. However, the material that was released was material from like 2004, 2005.
Wow.
Which a lot of people may not be aware of.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of until you just said it. I thought it was just stuff to lead up into Earn or just
no. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those EPs, it was all music that was written then. We just recorded it later.
Yeah. I've heard a little bit. I know there's some stuff floating on YouTube. Like I said, I wish I'd known about you all then. That way I would have contributed and have them in my hands.
Yeah. But you found us now. But I think the music floating around out there. However, it's not in sort of physical form to purchase anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was strictly for the crowdfunding campaign, so we wanted to kind of honor that and keep it
right
within that campaign for those people that supported us for getting overseas.
All right. And so we get to album 3, Earn. Great album. Great album.
Thank
like
you.
what was that like that whole process?
That was actually quite a stressful time for the band, because we just our bassist was no longer in the band then, and so there's a lot going on with that, and so it was kind of a very dark time for the band to write. However, at the same time, it was interesting to see with the stress we were all going through at that point in time. Kind of made us almost feel a lot closer and gave us almost more of a drive to prove to ourselves that we're in a shit place, but we can focus together, and it kind of gave us a better understanding of each other, and we worked really well together under the stress to make that album actually happen in such a short amount of time.
Right.
So it kind of proved to ourselves that if we lose a member, we can still make good music.
Yeah, I know on this album you had Robin Zellhorst.
Lost. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you all hook up with him to play bass on the album?
Well, we'd all thought he was an amazing bass player.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought, we can either get a session musician or we can get a permanent member. However, getting a permanent member within that time was a lot to ask, considering, it was only the space of a couple of months. And we wanted to actually find someone that was permanent. It would require a lot more time, some touring to see how they fit and that sort of thing. Whereas Robin, it was just like, okay, so we've got an album that's done. We want to record bass. Who's a bassist that we like? The sound of, also what albums have they done and that sort of thing. So I guess we made a list of bassists that we thought would be able to contribute something to our sounds. And so Tim had contacted him, and with a bit of back and forth, we finally came to what you hear in the album.
And how did you, when you started touring, how did you hook up with Martino?
Well, we put out an audition thing for people that would potentially be interested in trying out for the position of bassist. So that was an international, I guess, audition process. And that was possible because, Benji, our French guitarist, was, when he joined the band, he was in France at the time.
Yeah.
So he'd auditioned. And so we thought, okay, so if Benji can do it, then there's nothing that's holding back from getting another international musician as opposed to someone that was local.
Right.
And so we auditioned internationally and had, initially it was, over 100 sort of initial bassists that wanted to audition. We went through a bit of a process in regards to listening to some of our music and being able to play it from ear, and writing your own take on some of our music, that sort of thing. And so we whittled it down, and ultimately in the end, Martino was the choice.
Yeah, and he's a great fit.
He's an amazing bassist. It's because I'd never heard Ancient Bards, his other band.
Yeah, I heard a little bit. They're pretty good.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting sound, but I'd never paid any attention to them prior to us hearing about him. And it's after we kind of got him on board, we took him on our can't remember where we toured with him first. It might have been the US.
Yeah, I think that was the first time I saw him on stage. Was you guys just toured the Legion, and my buddy of mine's band opened that show in Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay. What band was that?
Proliferation. Like, they opened up for you guys.
I remember that.
Yeah, they opened up for you guys the second time I saw you with the Black Crown Initiate and Starkill tour.
Okay, that's
because you all played like the original Masquerade back in 2016. You played up the upstairs in Heaven with Cradle, and then you played in Hell, the downstairs with Starkill.
Yeah. I remember us having a discussion about that actually closing down, because we didn't mind that venue.
But then you only played like the new location once with that tour I mentioned before with the Legion.
We had that tour as kind of a test for Martino to see how we fit in and whether he was comfortable with what we were doing. And like halfway through the tour, it was the perfect fit for us. And so and he's still here today, so we must be doing something right.
Yeah, I kind of like predicted he would join since you all had him for.
Yeah, he's such a good personality and a good fit with what we're doing. So and you'll probably hear that on the new material.
Yeah. And I'm also wanted to switch topics. Let's talk about Antiqva. How did that form? Because that has been a long hike.
It's been a very long hike. So Lindsay and I met in 2013.
Yeah.
So we didn't meet on the kind of US tour. We met 2013 when Cradle of Filth came to Australia.
Yeah.
And played here, and we supported them with another Australian band called The Inventor. Another amazing Australian band. People should check out. And so we met then, and then a couple of years went by, and we ended up touring together. And on one tour, we ultimately decided, I wanted to do something a bit more black orientated in the sound. I mean, I love what we do in Nero, but at the same time, it doesn't have that element that I want more of also.
Yeah.
And Lindsay wanted to do something a bit different from Cradle, something a bit more black as well, but also with a classical influence. We thought, oh, why don't we just start a band together?
Yeah, and try to like meld the two styles together.
Yeah, so more of a not necessarily orchestral. Over time, we diluted that from being purely kind of big and orchestral to something more intimate, being more of a chamber music influence. So utilizing all the instruments we have within the project, as opposed to having a big, complete kind of orchestral sound, which feels too impersonal in a lot of regards. So over the course of years, we kind of gathered different members from, we're now 7 members across 5 countries.
Oh wow!
And so that obviously took a little time, and here we are in 2020, mid-pandemic, and so we thought, because everyone's bands are on some sort of a hiatus in regards to touring and that sort of thing, we thought, why don't we utilize this time to get some music out there that will silence people a little, instead of asking us when something's coming out or what it actually sounds like. Considering, we made them, I wouldn't say mistake, we gathered early interest because we're talking about the project for quite a long time, yet having not produced anything. And so we thought this was the time to make something and say, here it is, shut up, this is what we sound like.
Yeah.
See what you think. So
yeah, and I heard and I heard the song today, and it's fucking awesome. Like, it was so worth the wait.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm glad it was worth the wait, because I've been in Neo for Neo's 17 years old.
Which is crazy. I didn't even know you guys been around that long when I first got into you guys.
Yeah, well, most bands spend years and years in Australia touring and doing whatever, completely unknown to the rest of the world. And then when you release something, 9 years later, they think, you're a brand new band.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting with Antiqva, because it felt almost ominous, it's like Antiqva had never released anything before. And so it's a new sort of feeling again to be a new band, in a sense, releasing music for the first time for everyone to hear and to get an idea of what you sound like. So there's a lot of pressure in that regard. I guess a lot of pressure would be on ourselves, trying to prove and trying to, you don't want to necessarily make a comparison to the other bands you're in, but to be that sort of same quality, I guess.
Right, and then finally we get to Omega Infinity, which is another one of your projects. Tell me a little bit about that, just to like wrap everything up.
Yeah, Omega Infinity is, I guess you would call it, a industrial black metal band in a lot of ways. Very, very black metal, very cosmic influenced.
Yeah, especially like the song titles have like named after the planets and shit.
Yeah, so the project was by the drummer, as I mentioned earlier, from Toggelicht. Well, they're no longer around. They disbanded a few years ago. They're a German kind of avant-garde, kind of extreme band. And he came to me one day with a couple of tracks. So we've been friends for a number of years, and he came to me with a couple of tracks and said, do you want to be a part of this project? And as soon as I heard it, it was, non-stop blast beats. And as soon as I heard it, I said, yes, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
And because it was exactly what I was after at the right point in time, because I think a lot of bands, you can be quite an abrasive and extreme band, but at the same time, it doesn't have that rawness, that kind of wall of wall of sound that I was kind of missing in a lot of, I guess, black metal.
Right.
And this is you know, this was me for where I could just experiment a little bit more in terms of vocally as well, and just not give a shit. So this project is kind of like an outlet where we can just do whatever we want. We're not concerned overly about the clarity of sound like you would get in, say, Neo or something to that extent. It's just the sound is not pristine. The sound is abrasive. It can be very ugly, and we can, you know, it's purely a studio project, so there's no kind of pressure on us for playing live or anything like that.
Yeah, because I was listening to that album earlier before the interview, and I was like, damn, this is awesome.
Thank you. So yeah, that has come quite a long way since we started. So we released our album in March, end of March, I believe, at the start of this whole pandemic, and I'm about to start recording vocals for the second album.
Oh wow. This also makes me wondering, like, since like with all these projects that you're in, do you also have like a different like mind frame when it comes to each project, or is there like a usual like formula or just like game plan that you stick with that like is that it the same projects?
Well, I mean, there's different levels of pressure with each of the bands. I mean, with Neo, not to say there's not a high standard in the other bands. With Neo, everything is very precise with everything. So there's a bit more pressure in the studio for me in regards to everything being precise, everything sounding how it should be. Whereas if I go into recording process with Omega Infinity, it's just I can sound ugly, and I can make a lot more. Not, you know, not that I advise making a lot of mistakes, but you make a lot more mistakes, and you just don't give a fuck about the recording process. So it's yeah, it's probably, I mean, it's still a lot of pressure for recording regardless. But you know, I think over time with the projects that I have, I'm a lot better prepared going into the studio regardless. So the process is not quite the same for all the projects, but I would say Neo is probably a bit more one where I have to take a longer sort of portion of time to prepare for.
Right, and I think that's pretty much about it. But just thank you so much for this interview. Is there just anything else you would just like to promote in terms of like Neo, Antiqva, or Omega Infinity? I mean, obviously, thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named, touring's pretty much out of the equation. But I guess once this is all said and done, we can see you out on the road soon. Is there also a chance maybe you'll bring Antiqva to tour in the US?
Yeah, it's so next year is going to be a very busy year for all my projects ultimately. So, you know, Antiqua's going to be finished writing. Well, we're going into the new year writing the rest of the album, and ideally that's ultimately we plan to have that as a touring band. Right. However, we need to release that album before we can tour. Neo is almost finished the recording process, so it's just got Tim and myself left to record for the album.
Right.
So that will be released in 2021, and the next Omega Infinity album will be released in 2021 as well. So it's going to be a very busy year for all my projects, and hopefully once the pandemic has settled down a bit, because we already have touring plans for Neo. Yeah. So we're, but we have to, you know, see how the world is before those are actually kind of announced.
Yeah, you know, I'm there. I think I've seen every Atlanta show you've done since that Cradle tour. I've seen you guys 4 times. Wait,
okay. 5. Yeah, I can't remember how many times we've been to the US to tour yet.
So it was only 4 times.
Yeah, maybe.
Unless you count 70,000 tons.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I mean, that was. Well, that was the start of. Did we do that separately? We did that separately. I can't remember. It's all mixed up.
That's all good.
But yeah, thank you very much for the support, and for anyone that's listening for the support. But yeah, for the most I guess, most recent thing. So if anyone's interested in Antiqua, we released our debut single today, actually, officially today. And we hope you enjoy it. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, awesome. So everyone, Xen from Ne Obliviscaris, Antiqua and Omega Infinity. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next time. Take care.